I'd like to thank everybody for being here. I'm Travis Sims. I'm the Vertical Portfolio Manager for Media and Entertainment for Egnyte. I'm joined here by Abhishek Kuznapali, who's our Senior Product Marketing Manager. And additionally, we have some other guests here. But before we get started, one of the things that I want to be able to do today is go over one of the key points of our discussion, and it's how we're managing large file assets and how this is becoming a substantially easier conflict to manage. And in part, that's because we have great critical relationships between companies that aren't trying to build silos and more sprawl, but are trying to make it easier how you redefine your access, make your effort to organize your files, a way in which you don't have to require extra steps. So with that, this week, Egnyte is announcing a formal integration and connector with CI Hub. And I'd like to give Andy a few minutes here to introduce himself and what they've been up to.
That's totally amazing. Thanks a lot for giving us the ability to sneak in here. My name is Andreas. I'm running a company, CI Hub. What we do is actually we try to help organizations access their data in a much better way than before. Access at every stage. That's what we deliver. And what do we deliver? We call it connectors. So one of the main topics here is moving assets is always a hassle because these assets are large, they are stored in a very central place, and what you don't want is to move them a lot around. But you need all of these assets in the applications where the teams are using them. So our goal the last years is we've built it around 30 different connectors to every relevant business application. That includes all of the creation tools you're using, like Premiere Pro and others. And what we do is we enable users to access the content that in this case is stored in an Egnyte system right from within the application. And this makes working much easier because you're not just investing in the horizontal integration of all your different storage systems and get all of that stuff together in one database, but you now also have the ability to have a vertical integration into the workflows, into the processes that the users are using. And this creates a very unique efficiency for everyone that's involved in handling large and single assets in applications. That allows that these assets stay in the Egnyte system. You open your timeline. You have all of the access to all of the assets right within the timeline. You plop it in there. And what the CI Hub system does in addition, it helps you stay on top because if something is changing in the backend, in the storage, it automatically notifies you and you can push a button and update the assets right in the application or in the timeline. This is something that's really, really efficient and that helps people work more efficient. In addition, we have a product that brings actually all of the content right into your Finder and Explorer and allows you to access the whole content storage right on your desktop in Finder and Explorer and allows you upload, download, metadata changes. That makes it really easy. And we're really, really happy to be here and announce the integration with Egnyte. That really helps users a lot, getting their workflow much more efficient and simpler. And this is how it would look. You're in your creation application. You have the panel. That panel lives inside all of these different applications, give you direct access, and makes it much easier to work with that. This is streamlining production to a really new level, and working with the Egnyte storage in the backend is totally efficient. So, move what matters. And not every asset needs to be moved just to use it. This is what we've introduced. I would be totally happy with my team. They are over there to talk with you if you want to have more details. And I'm really thankful that you gave me these 4 minutes. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it, Andy. Thank you very much. So I like to start these conversations out. I mean, it's great to come in here and be able to pitch you guys and show you a product, but I think it's really useful for us to come through and also kind of give you guys a problem and talk a little bit about where I think a lot of us are, but give you guys a little bit more insight into kind of what we're doing towards the tail end. So with that, I want to thank Andy again for the exciting stuff. We're grateful to have you guys as partners. And the subject of today's topic, by the way, is large file workflows and the mindset that's shifting as cloud storage and collaboration systems become more efficient. And what I'd like to do today is kind of keep it practical. This is not going to be a generic storage talk. It's not going to be a pure feature pitch, like I said, but we really want to address a workflow problem. So as media teams have gotten more distributed, as files have gotten much larger, and as that content now moves through more teams, more systems, and a lot more handoffs than ever before, if we're talking about certain instances, editorial touches it, review touches it, external partners touch it, delivery touches it, at a point even archive touches it after all of that. The result of that is that a lot of those large file workflows don't usually break because people do something wrong. They break because a lot of the underlying models are still based on moving a file from place to place, and that creates that fragmentation. So the story that we want to walk through is simple. It's first, why the workflows break. Second, why the copies keep getting created. And third, why solving that layer and that problem typically doesn't fix the workflow. And finally, what changes when you stop moving the full file and start changing the access around it. So we'll move to this. Great. So let's start with the reality of a single production. And again, we're looking at this in a very simplified manner, but even when people talk about, one single project or one single asset, that content usually lives across a range of systems: editing, review, delivery, storage, project management, collaboration. And each of these solves a real need. Editing needs performance, review needs lightweight access, delivery needs movement, storage needs scale, project systems need structure, and collaboration needs accessibility. And so the problem isn't that these things exist, it's that each one typically has its own storage model a lot of the time. Each one has its own access rules. Each one has its own file state. So even when teams think that they're working on the same content, they often aren't working on the same file state. And so that's where the confusion starts. What's current, what was approved, and still what has the right context that is attached to that file. And at the business level, it all looks like one workflow, but operationally, it's a lot of different separate ones. So this is the core diagnosis for us. Large files didn't break workflows. They exposed the model that was already under strain. File sizes increased like we talked about. The work expanded across a number of different teams, and each environment, each location, they're all optimized for their own needs, their own performance, their own accessibility, their own delivery, their own scale. And none of that's irrational, but the core assumption always has stayed the same for most teams, which is we move the file wherever the work needs to happen. And so that creates a centralized model, but it breaks down when some of that content moves across many teams and many environments, many locations, and external collaborators. So the issue isn't the file itself. Like I said, it's how that file is actually being moved. So this is kind of what it looks like in practice, very general sense. We're taking one example to be able to show this, but you start with something like a master file, for example. You work from ingest, and that branches out into multiple workflow scenarios. Your editorial is going to work on a local copy for performance-based issues. External or VFX team get their own copy. Review works off a proxy. Delivery produces another version for distribution. So the file isn't necessarily moving cleanly through a workflow. It's multiplying into different working states. And while each state serves a purpose, every new state increases the risk of losing that continuity. And so this is where that workflow becomes many file states. So once those copies begin to multiply, the problem of continuity control really starts to creep up. Every single copy breaks something. Permissions don't follow cleanly. Version history resets itself. Context gets lost and rebuilt inconsistently multiple times. And the visibility ends once that file leaves that system of record. So teams spend far too much time, trying to reconcile the fact that they should have just kept it intact. And that's why this isn't just a storage or a transfer problem. This is every copy breaking that chain. And so this is where that behavior comes from. Teams don't create copies because they're careless. They don't create them to stay responsive. It's files get heavier, real-time access actually starts to slow down. Remote full-time access introduces latency. And so teams create local working copies like we were talking about just to keep moving. But the problem that solves in the immediate creates more separation on the later workflow states. And that's the key point, is that a copy is just a workaround in most instances. It's not a full-blown workflow. So if you want to reduce that fragmentation, you just don't tell teams to keep copying or to stop copying. You keep them, tell them to remove that reason that they need to. And so with that, one of the things that we'd like to introduce here that we're showing at the show this year is our adaptive block cat tool. And so this is kind of a new thing that's put into our cloud content platform, our cloud collaboration and storage platform. So we'd like to give you just a little sense of what that is.
Yep. Thank you, Travis. Hello, everybody. So When we're talking about adaptive block caching, what we're introducing here is moving beyond the traditional way of working on these bigger files. So if you're working on like a standard 20 slide deck, or you're working on a Word document, moving that up and down, sharing, putting an email attachment, waiting for it to fully open and render, that's fine. That doesn't take too long. You're used to that. But as Travis is saying, as these files get more complicated, we're all seeing some of the really cool stuff here of the content you can generate and the power of the AI and so much other things. That complexity does not align itself with the traditional way of us collaborating with each other. So what we're proposing here with adaptive block caching is making these files much more manageable to work with, which starts from caching these files in more manageable blocks rather than as entire files for every operation. So visually what that looks like here, as you can see, is taking a file, so wherever that's from, an example Premiere Pro, you take it down, the system will adaptively create, NC adapt, where it creates more manageable blocks. And that's dependent upon a variety of factors, right? The actual file size, the complexity of the file, whatever structures you may have, and using those blocks. So for example, if Travis is working on a Premiere Pro project, the file will bring down the block that's required to open it so that you can start working quicker. And then when you're in there, you're working. And this also makes recent changes much more easier to access because it's only syncing the file blocks back and not the entire thing. So now let's say I want to see what Travis just did. I'll be able to see a lot quicker than waiting, if we're talking about a 100 gigabyte project, I got to wait a few hours for him to upload it. I got to sit there and think about my life and then finally be like, okay, let me go and do this. So with adaptive block caching, again, what we're trying to avoid is the kind of version chaos that we see and the long delays that it takes to get projects from ideation to completion. So this is a really cool feature. It lives in our desktop application or desktop overlay, which is not an overlay, by the way. It's also working without interruption. And we can obviously talk more about this in our booth as well. So on the Windows side and the Mac side are taking two different sort of launch points. The Mac side will be generally available, expected in June. But it's always open right now. We're in a limited availability phase. So if you're interested in checking it out, let us know and you can get that going.
Okay, so before we jump back, one of the other things I did want to point out about, the ABC tool that's kind of interesting is that this is also optimized based on the file type that you're actually putting forward to it. So if it's a Premiere Profile, InDesign file, Resolve, whatever you're in from a platform standpoint, it's going to recognize how those nested folder structures are operating. So it's going to recognize how much media you have, how much content, and it's going to prefetch the blocks based on that file type. So it is something that is being validated across a number of different platforms. So we're always curious to hear about the workflows that you guys have. Feel free to come by and give us a conversation about it. But yeah, again, kind of the takeaway from this whole thing is this is kind of where the model shifts, right? The goal isn't to add another collaboration layer. It's to make a file system the file system the layer of the foundation. So the workflows stay the same: editorial, VFX, review, delivery, but underneath it all, there's one governed file state. Permissions, versions, access are all managed at the source, not recreated in every single handoff. That allows teams to keep familiar with a lot of the tools and the workflows that they're supposed to be working on while still maintaining that continuity and control.
Awesome. So when we're talking about that unified repository, it's really at the center of whatever you're trying to do, right? We're talking about all the various cool AI design stuff that you can build new things. You can bring intelligence, extract metadata, all of that stuff. All of that stuff is only as powerful as the actual data that you have. And if you have it living in multiple different places, disorganized, not easy to find, not easy to parse, you're at a disadvantage. So where we're talking about the sort of file system layer, that's serving as the foundation for whatever you're trying to do beyond that, right? All of these great governance tools you're seeing as well. Again, their job is a lot harder when your stuff is not organized. So putting it in one place, operating on a single pane of glass, and applying our own intelligence and governance on top of that really helps you set up for whatever you're trying to do beyond that, right? There's so much cool stuff you're seeing here. I'm sure you all are working on. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. Without the right foundation, you're off on the wrong foot. So if we want to kind of step back and think about the takeaways of what we were just talking about here today, we're really emphasizing one governed source. So every team from anywhere that can work with less fragmentation. And that one governed file state really helps carry you through from your ideation all the way to delivery of whatever the project is. Need to be iterations, reviews, approvals, whatever the case may be, able to operate that from one place. So now all of the long turnaround times, the delays, I'm operating off the wrong file. There's a change I missed that was in yesterday. We can avoid all of that mess and operate from one place. And the really cool thing about this too is all of the tools that you're working on today, the intent is to make sure you can keep doing that without interruption. So that all of your teams, no one likes interruption. And as admins, as IT folks, no one likes to be able to be like, oh crap, how do I go and tell them and teach them how to do something new? We want to avoid all of that stuff so that you're working without that interruption. Only access the files that you need to access to work on the access portion of it and not the file movement. And with our new technology of block level access, adaptive block caching, we can start treating those really, really complex big files more like their normal size files so that we're not straining the internet connections. We're not worrying about shipping hard drives around. We're not worrying about updating infrastructure. If you're working with remote teams and, they ask you, hey, can I get a new laptop? Hey, can you pay for my Wi-Fi to be faster? Things like that. We can avoid a lot of those conversations by making the overall setup a lot more efficient. And we always talk about AI, we always talk about data and stuff like that, but it all starts with persistent governance, with security. When we're talking about large amounts of data, large amounts of projects, confidential projects, we want to make sure that everything is securely handled and trusted handled. And that starts with permissions, that starts with access controls, and a lot of the transparency that it comes with, and securing all of your repositories from one place rather than 50, 60, 70 of those that just cause more headaches for all of you. So, the workflow doesn't have to fragment just to stay performant. We need to focus on stopping moving the files, but moving access for people. Thank you so much. And please come see us at the booth. We have you can win some meta glasses, but also see this stuff in action, see our entire platform from intelligence, governance, and collaboration. Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it, everyone.